Okay, we're back. Recorded Futures, what's on the horizon? I'm talking with Dr. Glyde today, who is a futurist, a connector, an enabler. You do a bunch of stuff. You're also a certified fraud examiner. And we've been talking before we started recording. I'm super pumped to talk with you about the future. I'm trying to understand the future
Yeah, me
better,
too.
what
Me
future
too.
risks there are. You spoke recently at the CFE conference. And so let's jump into trying to understand the future of risk to the workforce and what kind of, there's going to be fraud risks, we're going to have health risks, we're going to have compliance risks, we're going to have ethics risks. So let's just jump in there. This is your strong suit. Tell us what kind of risk should we be concerned about in the next 5 to 10 years with our workforce?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of different ways to look at risk, of course. And certainly we can look at risk from kind of a direction of workforce preparedness, right? And ability and that kind of thing. But we can also look at it, from the perspective of, how is this workforce integrating with the corporate space that they actually exist in. And I think that the pandemic really presented us with a lot of, one, challenges, and then two, really important realizations about um, the reality of modern work,
Right.
or I should say today's work, right?
Today's work.
Today's work, I suppose, because today's work is always modern work, whatever time that is. But the point just being that ultimately, the question is, how ready and willing are people to use new tools, right? But as much as corporations looked at their people to do that, they also had to examine themselves and their culture and look at the idea of, okay, how comfortable are we overnight shifting gears, and is that something we can actually do? And the reality is the capability out there to do it? Absolutely. But had most corporations bought it yet? And the answer is no. Most corporations had not bought it yet.
Is there a lack of
And
understanding here? Is it a lack of comfort? What is it
uh,
about
I
that
think
they don't
I, I
want to
think
buy
it's an
into?
issue. Yeah, it's a really great question, and I think it's really an issue of change. It's an issue of, are we willing to change as a company, as a workforce, as people? Because right, whether you're the front of the line employee or whether you're the CEO, we're all people. We have that in common, right? We're human. And the reality is that we don't tend to want to adopt change as quickly as it happens. We want to kind of hold back, see what happens. Can I wait? Can I make a choice? Can I avoid a decision today and make it next week or next month? And if we look at that during the pandemic, what really was revealed is how costly waiting to make decisions is. And I guess the big thing, whether it's in a fraud prevention space or whether it's in any of these other spaces, that I would encourage anyone to do is to act first. Okay, and I know that maybe that's scary, right? But I think the tough part is unless you act first, you don't actually have information to make a decision about. A lot of
That's
times
true.
you need to act to be able to go, oh, that tool is lame and doesn't work.
Like applying
Otherwise,
stimulus.
yeah,
Right.
otherwise it's marketing and it's salespeople and it's, whatever the other person who has an agenda told you, or those kinds of issues, or organizational politics, right? Turf wars and resource allocation problems and all these kinds of things. Um, and as goofy as it sounds, right? There's a reason why free trial is a thing, right? And granted, 77,000, 80,000, 100,000 person corporation probably isn't going to have much of a free trial. But the point I'm trying to make here is that a lot of these technology tools understand in order to see the value, you've got to try it. You've got to try it, and dive in. And the pandemic forced that issue for a lot of people, and a lot of organizations alike.
Well, I
Even in
mean,
our
one day,
conversation.
and
Go
that's the
ahead.
thing. One day we were working in our offices, and we had VPN. We didn't need VPN. We had everything was on our own network. And then the next day, literally almost overnight, within a couple of weeks, if you weren't paying
Hmm.
attention to what was going on, it literally had to go, okay, now we have all these people working from home, and what does that look like? How do we keep them
Right.
safe? And not just, cyber is a kind of a hot topic, and we'll get to
Oh
that,
yeah.
and we've been talking about that, but how do we ensure their physical risks now they are traveling maybe in a different way than what they were traveling before, and maybe they aren't traveling, and what does that mean, and how do they stay efficient? I really
Hmm.
look
Hmm.
at how do we empower businesses to stay resilient? Because I
Hmm.
think resiliency is that superpower. That's the thing
Hmm.
that's going to give
Hmm.
you that strategic advantage to be dominant in your marketplace. But how do we continue
Right.
to make that, now a whole economy or a whole industry like this?
Hmm.
That's, I
Hmm.
think, the challenge.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and resiliency ties into that point that I was making about change. Resiliency is the idea of being flexible, being adaptable, and understanding that nothing is as static as we think it is. And I think as much as we look at what's gone on in the last year and how large, massive corporations have gone, we were going this way, now we're going that way. Um, what's really interesting to me to look at is small business, small and medium sized business.
Okay.
Businesses anywhere from the mom and pop shop to, your say $100 million kind of company, and which tend to be a lot of what I work with. A lot of times I tend to work with smaller businesses, and it's really interesting to see how quickly they had to change, but they didn't have budgets to change. They didn't have a lot of resources that the large companies, they have a lot of resources. They have project management offices that can go fire out an RFP tomorrow. We'll sign up with them immediately. We'll make something work. We'll stick it together, grab the duct tape, and make it happen.
Right.
And even though it was uncomfortable and it was painful, large corporate America kind of jerry rigged it together and made it work. And we were all grateful, most of us anyway, that they did. But at the same time, there were a lot of small businesses that were really suffering because they don't have the
Access to
resources,
capital.
access to capital, and then the other thing is the skill sets to work with the tools. And so one really important kind of element of resiliency to me, um, and this is true whether, say, you're a fraud investigation company or a private investigation company, or whether you're um, a company making vegan ice cream. Okay, to use another example,
Yeah.
but the bottom line is you've got to collaborate. You have to have resources outside your organization, and it's really important to understand that our organizations are not fixed, bounded things, right? They're really part of the society we all live in. And while that's, a lot of fluff, right, in some ways, it's important to understand that you got to have partnerships. And they could be a digital partnership with someone on a freelance partner in India. It doesn't have to be down the road. And it's tough for mom and pop businesses, or even a $5 million manufacturing business to look at the world that way. And it's funny to say that because it's 2021 and globalization is a 1980s topic,
That's right. It's
right?
nothing new.
Right. It's nothing new. I'm not pulling back the curtain that no one is, but the reality is that, all of us at work, we get our blinders on and we get stuck in what we're doing. And we don't bring in enough outside information, enough outside involvement, all those kinds of things. And, you can even see the importance of this, for example, in the consulting world. If you look at really successful consulting engagements versus ones that don't work, ones that don't work are, we have a box solution. We're going to bring in your company and bring the solution. We're going to smash the two together, and then we have an outcome.
Right.
And oftentimes, company leaders love that because they get exactly what they asked for. And consultants love it because they can sell it super easy, right?
Yes.
You get this list of 10 benefits, and they know that they can turn around to the client afterwards and say, you got these 10 benefits. and the client has to agree. They got those 10 benefits. The tough part is that once you're done, those 10 benefits don't mean what you think they mean.
That's right. Does
to
it
your
really
organization.
In 6
Right,
months
because
from now?
right, because it wasn't right sized for you. It didn't treat you like the unique thing that you are. And so, the example I guess I would use is in any of the consulting that I do. Yeah, I use a lot of different tools and things that are off the shelf. But very often a consulting meeting, once we're a third of the way through the project, is we've got all this data in here, we've done all this stuff. We're working on this investigation, and we're working with your data, and we're also looking at an analytic solution for later to prevent this kind of problem. Because I tend to look at things multidimensionally, right? Brought us in for an investigation, great, but I'd like to also show you some things you could do to prevent this in the future. So you don't need me back here.
No, prevention is totally worth
right.
it, and this is what we should have been talking about 2, 3, 4 years ago. Is how to
right,
prevent
exactly,
the next
exactly. And so very often, I end up in consulting meetings about a third of the way through a project in the early portion where I'm like, okay, here's a rough out of what we're looking at. Does that look like what you were expecting? Yes. Okay. Nod. Oh, here's this other thing. Another tool that we have that we can customize to you. This isn't the customized version yet, but if you look at this, you would have caught this thing, and you can see, I can show you right here how you would have caught it, what it would have looked like. And then you could have said, we're going to save ourselves $500,000 because we didn't become vulnerable to this fraud. We caught it early. And early detection is a critical element of that, and sometimes it's no more complicated than management having good protocols and some rudimentary tools. It doesn't even have to be amazing tools. It just has to be things that cobble together information in a way that they don't normally look at it, and then they go, oh, what's that weird $300,000 number? That looks strange. Let's click on that and dig down. Wait, there was a check? When was there a check? And that kind of thing. And while that sounds really simplistic, it can be that simple. And that's kind of the point. And a lot of small to medium-sized businesses, they're very engaged in how do I sell my stuff? And they need to be, because you need cash flow to stay open, and they're small. They don't have a lot of credit lines. They don't have a big deep pocket, right? But the whole key is you don't need super expensive tools, right? You can use reasonably priced tools to do this stuff. If you want to pay someone outside to do it, you can hire me, that's fine. But, I can show you how to do this for yourself, or I can do it for you. I don't care which. I just want you to not be, the ostrich with the head in the sand, going, now I don't understand where my money went. And the other thing about that is small business can't take a hit. And the pandemic has shown us that, right? The big corporations are riding the wave. It may be painful. It may be awful for some of them. Some other organizations may, aka Amazon, have made out better than anybody. And it not been bad. It was the opportunity that drove them to the next level and sent, space rockets up. But, the point being, these smaller organizations, a lot of them, they closed their doors because they just simply couldn't fathom a way to deal with this situation. So the important thing is to get these organizations to think, and a lot of times I spend a lot of effort trying to get a CEO or president or business owner of a small company to spend roughly a third of their time working on the business instead of in their business, right? A lot of what I do is management advisory and at work and stuff like that. And I tell them, if you're not spending a third of your time working on the business instead of in it, then at some point your processes are going to fail you. You also won't see where you're vulnerable. And then you'll be really sad, because all the work in your business you spent the time to do, time away from family, time away from friends, stressful nights working on things when you want to be with the kids or with the spouse or with whatever, or you'd rather be watching a game or doing a barbecue or I don't know, living life, right? Because like,
Right.
why do we start a business, you know? So anyway, the bottom line here is you're just going to be sad that that effort was wasted. And that isn't something you want to do to yourself or your loved ones or anything else. So, trying to drive that and that dovetails into what you're saying about risk, right? There's all these risks from many different places. But there are a lot of key things that we can look at to know where we're vulnerable. And then we have to decide how do we in bite-sized pieces eliminate those risks or at least reduce them, right? Because they aren't going to go away unless you just don't do business. Just
Yes.
forget it, close your doors, go home. But, figuring out how to reduce it's important.
Business leaders don't really want to talk about the bad stuff that could happen to your business because
Mhm.
that understanding that and having a really intellectual conversation about your point about there's a bunch of things you can transfer risk, you can mitigate risk, you can avoid
Mhm.
risk, you can
Mhm.
offset it and all kinds of different vehicles to do that, like
Right,
insurance. But
right.
do you find that having that conversation was something that was so foreign, at least until this last year and a half, maybe,
Mhm.
was so foreign to them, they didn't even want to approach it. For example, I don't even want to talk about who will if I'm gone tomorrow, I'm the business founder, I'm the leader, I'm the CEO. If I'm gone tomorrow, I didn't even want to talk about succession, who's coming next, because I'll be here
Mhm.
forever.
Mhm.
Do you find that
Mhm.
maybe now they're a little bit more apt to talk about this as we get kind of right of bang? They're a little bit more engaging about this, or is it still like I still
Yeah,
don't
no,
want to really talk about it?
they're more equipped to talk about it now. You know, they're also more equipped to talk about, kind of like what happens when the way that I'm doing business suddenly ends
Yeah,
in a way that's out of my control. I use the example of a little vegan ice cream company, right?
yeah,
And the point being that overnight no one can come in to buy ice cream. The particular example I'm thinking of, small staff, 4 people.
right.
It's not a big company. Um, and immediately overnight, how do we sell our stuff? What do we do? People looking left and right at each other going, do you know how to make a web page? You know how to accept payments online? I don't. Have you ever researched it? No. You know what I mean? And so all those kinds of things came up really fast. And then the minute you're thinking payments online, you're thinking, wait, what are we exposing ourselves to? Right?
Yep.
And is this going to work and all these kinds of things? And they immediately had to change their business model. So one thing that a lot of conversations with small business leaders like them and others, including different manufacturing companies and a number of other organizations, turned into how do we develop the skill to pivot? How do we develop the skill to develop new ideas? And it has to be more than someone getting on Google and typing in what do I do about X. Got to be better than that, right?
Right.
So I've done a lot with vision workshops, right? And what's changed in the last year has been before this, vision workshops were very disconnected to the moment,
Hmm.
right? They were very pie in the sky. What would I like to have if I could have it? Conversations.
Hmm.
Um, and then maybe we'll figure out how to get there someday, right? And that's kind of turned into a bit of a more practical type thing, where it's like, okay, the best way to actually create a new path is you need a lot of voices in a room. You need to gather that information from those people. You need to creatively work through some scenarios with them and say, well, what would you like to see? What do you think? What have you seen that's worked? You need to workshop that really quick in 3 hours, right? You need to really quickly develop kind of a minimum viable product sort of approach to like, this is what we're going to try, this is what we're going to do. Just like a lot of consultants found themselves going, crap, I'm used to being able to go out, knock on the door of my customer, go in and do work for them. And suddenly I can't do that anymore. And they had to figure out all the stuff we had to figure out, right? Um,
Now we're virtual.
yeah, and fortunately, some of us were doing that beforehand.
Right.
Like I've been virtual since 2003, so
Before it was
but
cool.
yeah, oh yeah, it was tragically not cool back then. Um, but uh, but the point just being that you know being able to take information, like I'm a data-driven guy as much as the next person, right? My background is operations, finance, and IT. It led me to the fraud space. So obviously heavily data-driven. But in the last, say, 8 years, I've really integrated a people, societal, boundless organization kind of element to it. And it's really understanding, okay, if we have a product that we're selling, how many different ways can we get it to where we need to get it, and do it in a safe, secure, lower risk way? And who can we talk to about that? And lots of times it means get customers in the room, get suppliers in the room, get
Yes.
bankers in the room, get yourself in the room, get some employees in the room, and brainstorm the crap out of this thing, until you find a couple things to hang your hat on, brainstorm those things, and then try them and see what happens. And great things can happen.
I think that's a great point. There will be a lot more experimentation in the future,
Hmm.
trying to figure
Hmm.
out what sticks. And I love your idea about bringing people together and having that collaborative approach. I think
Hmm.
that's, whether that be in a virtual space, VR, AR, or in a
Hmm.
physical space, doesn't matter.
Hmm.
I still think you'll get value from it, especially if you're an international company and you want to bring customers together from Asia and Africa and
Absolutely.
South America, and everyone wants to come together. That's brilliant. But we need more of that, what I call cross mogination. We
Hmm.
need to
Hmm.
bring people together.
Absolutely.
We're only, yeah, I say the world is only getting smaller.
Hmm.
Things are only getting more complex because of relationships. By the way, that's not bad. As you know,
No,
that's good.
no. Yeah, it
Complexity is
is.
good. How did we
It
get
is.
in the 1960s? We came out of World War II, big boom in the economy. By the 1960s, actually, Russia in the late 50s put something above the atmosphere into outer space, freaked everybody out. But with the technology from the 1940s, we were putting manned missions into orbit and then to the
Hmm.
moon. That, by the way, we haven't been back to do. Now, of course, technology in space has been progressing, but that ability where we came together as a world and we said this is what's important to us, we're going to put manned people in space. I think all of those things, those types of collaborations are good, and that's, by the way, the things that keep us from a human race that wants to destroy itself and wants to
Hmm.
launch rockets at each other or go shoot each other in the desert. We need to stop doing that and focus on how can we be more collaborative. Those are
Hmm.
the things
Hmm.
that will actually, save society, I'm hoping.
Right.
So,
Right.
in the last few minutes that we have, Dr. Guide, if you were going to advise a business leader or a workforce, this is the one thing that you can do to be resilient for the future, to show that you will be strategic in the future. What's that one thing that you would tell them to do? Does it involve technology? Does it involve collaboration? Is there something
Hmm.
that you would
Hmm.
you would advise them?
Uh, I'm gonna say something that maybe sounds cliche and overly simple, but it's be
All right.
human. Okay. I mean, the technology tools are great. We've had tools, gosh, go back the Bronze Age, the Stone Age, like tools are always going to be with us, right? But when we run into trouble is when we ignore the human element. Okay. So I would say that the tools are crucial, but without collaboration to understand which tools to use, how to use them, where to point them, we're kind of all in trouble. And and also how quickly to adopt them, and what do people need to know to use them, and all this information is in your workforce, in your people, or in your business partners, or in a collaborative space. of some kind. So I think collaboration is key. And even if we go back to conversations we were having before this podcast, we were talking about private investigators and groups and things.
Yeah.
Collaborations and relationships are crucial. Um, and that's that I would personally tag that as number one. And I would say that just because, I've had a career that's been focused on operations and IT, finance and organizational leadership. And ultimately where you end up after being data driven for forever is you go, oh man, what about the people?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we missed the boat because we weren't paying attention or the trend or what society is expecting or what's needed here, and all those different things are crucial, a crucial overlay with respect to technology and tools and adoption and fraud risk, fraud prevention, and as much as fraud investigating is a key career field, fraud prevention, if you look at what do we want from healthcare, for example, right? We want healthcare to prevent disease, not treat disease.
That's right.
Right? I mean, you want to treat it once you have it, but boy, you want to minimize how many people get it.
Right.
And so the fraud space, it's the same thing. And you want to minimize any chance of having this fraud situation. And the only way you inoculate a company or a society to something like that is to really engender the right sorts of behaviors, right sorts of patterns, the right sort of understanding. And if you look at our nation as a whole right now, we're in a challenging space when it comes to that. Yeah, this idea of collaboration, cross-pollination, is crucial. I would hang my hat on that, because you can get tools anywhere. There are a bunch of technology guys and gals out there making them every day. There's a new disruptive tool for something popping up each week, and they pop up faster than you can try to use them. But the question is, if change is outpacing you, then it's the battle is lost, right? You got to find a way to iterate fast, and that way involves a lot of people, a lot of energy, and a lot of focused momentum. And that only comes from collaboration. You can't do anything by yourself. And so that's what I would put it.
We're going to have more people on this planet than we've ever had before in the very near future. So we need to keep collaborating. We need to keep understanding. We need to keep seeking out what our personal truths are. And then the only way you can do that is by talking with people. I love these concepts. Dr. Glyde, thank you for being on this program. Thank you for sharing
thanks for having me
with us and your story, and your approaches are brilliant. What I always tell people at the end of these is, don't go it alone. Seek out the experts and the consultants in these fields and connect with them. You're certainly somebody they can connect with. Your information will be tagged down below in the comment section or in the post itself. So look for those people that can be your guide as we pivot, as we transition, as we become more resilient as an economy. And so with that, Dr. Glyde, thank you again for being on the program.
Definitely happy to have been here. Thanks so much, Scott.
Take care.
You too.